When people think of the Nintendo DS, they usually picture cheerful games with wide appeal. Titles like Nintendogs, Mario Kart DS, or Brain Age defined the system as a family-friendly machine, bright, accessible, and built to reach players who had never picked up a controller before. But in 2007, tucked between all of those lighthearted hits came something entirely different. Hotel Dusk Room 215 was no cartoon platformer. It was a brooding detective mystery set in a rundown Los Angeles hotel in 1979. Instead of chasing coins or pets, players stepped into the shoes of Kyle Hyde, a wary ex-cop haunted by his past. Instead of action sequences, the game offered long conversations, layered characters, and puzzles that force you to think outside the box, sometimes literally, like closing the DS to solve a riddle. Today, we're looking back at how a small studio named Cing used Nintendo's family-friendly handheld to deliver one of gaming's most distinctive cult classics. So flip the DS sideways, open your notebook, and join us as we revisit the mysteries of Hotel Dusk Room 215 on today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello, and welcome to the 282nd episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are revisiting the golden age of the Nintendo DS and exploring a cult classic from Cing, Hotel Dusk Room 215, a mystery novel you didn't read, you played. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my brother, who I'm pretty sure would interrogate every poor soul at the front desk before he even got his key. He's my brother. I already said he's my brother. Now he's my co-host because I decided to mix it up this time. He's my co-host, Rob Casson. Rob, when you stay at a shady hotel, do you unpack first or do you go snooping for secrets?
Well, first I turn on the light so there's less shade.
That's what you gotta do is turn on the lights.
Yep.
And then what? Do you like snoop through the entire... How does that work?
Well, you turn on the lights and see what's there, man. A lot of things you can see in the light that you can't see in the dark.
And do we do this every time we go into hotels?
I think you're thinking too much into it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Also joining us today is returning guest Ryan Shepard. Ryan, same question for you. When you stay at a shady hotel, do you unpack first or do you go snooping for secrets?
First of all, when you go into a hotel room, seedy, you got to get yourself in the mind of, this kind of detective noir style.
Do we do this every time we go into a seedy hotel because of this game?
There it is.
That's
My door.
We don't have to have an episode anymore because we just learned a legacy left behind. Done. Pack it up, boys. Let's go home. We don't have to worry about the rest of this. All right. Ryan, any familiarity with Hotel Dusk?
I did play this game back in the before times, and enjoyed it quite a bit. Turns out I'm not very good at detective games.
Rob, how about you? Are you better at detective games?
I don't know that I've played one.
Valid. So unknown. No data to make a determination.
You could be the best.
You could be.
I could be the very
You
best.
could be a regular Sherlock Holmes. Wow, that fell on deaf ears. I'm gonna leave that awkward silence in there for good measure.
It fits.
Well, we have a story to tell, like most weeks. Otherwise, I wouldn't show up every week if I didn't have a story to tell. But before we get into said story, Rob, why don't you share with our listeners what else has happened during this current week in gaming history?
First up, on January 21st, 1994, Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 was released for the Game Boy, developed and published by Nintendo. Marking Wario's first starring role after debuting as Mario's rival, the game shifted the series away from Mario style platforming and introduced a greedier, heavier, more chaotic playstyle built around Wario's brute strength and treasure hunting. Players rampage through Kitchen Island, smashing enemies, shoulder charging obstacles, and collecting as much loot as possible to fund Wario's dream of owning his own castle. With its distinct power ups, non-linear level design, and emphasis on exploration and wealth, Wario Land established Wario as a full fledged anti hero and launched a long running subseries with its own identity. It became one of the Game Boy's standout platformers and a defining moment in Nintendo's character driven evolution.
Pour one out for Wario Land.
War one out.
Well, ever since they came out with the WarioWare series, that's
Yeah,
kind of been Wario's identity ever since.
yeah,
I really missed these games.
yeah. They took that chaos, turned it into a bunch of chaotic mini games, and said, "Meh, good enough."
Nah, lame.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Oh well, such is history.
Indeed. Next, on January 21st, 1998, Resident Evil 2 was released for the PlayStation, developed and published by Capcom. This landmark sequel expanded the scope of the original Resident Evil with a larger world, dual protagonists, and a branching scenario system that let players experience the outbreak in Raccoon City from multiple perspectives. Following rookie cop Leon S. Kennedy and college student Claire Redfield as they fight to survive the monstrous aftermath of the T virus, the game delivered tense atmosphere, cinematic storytelling, and unforgettable enemies like the relentless Tyrant. Praised for its production values, improved pacing, and ambitious design, Resident Evil 2 became one of the defining survival horror titles of the 90s and a cornerstone of the franchise. We explored its development and legacy back in episode 125, so give it a listen if you'd like to learn more.
That was almost the end of the series. That was if you're curious why Resident Evil 2 was almost the end of the Resident Evil series, but some very important things happened during its development, like Resident Evil 1.5 getting scrapped and then they built a whole new game, and br- that breathed some life that breathed some life into the Resident Evil series, and now it persists to modern day. So that's a really fascinating story. I suggest y'all check it out.
That's a good episode for sure.
Indeed, it is. And a good story to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And on what is proving to be a busy day for important game releases, on January 21st, the following year in 1999, Super Smash Bros. Was released for the Nintendo 64 in Japan, developed by HAL Laboratory and directed by Masahiro Sakurai. What began as a small prototype called Dragon King, the fighting game, evolved into a crossover brawler that brought together Nintendo's most iconic characters Mario, Link, Samus, Pikachu, and more into a chaotic, accessible fighting arena unlike anything else at the time. Instead of traditional health bars, Smash Bros. Used percentage based knockback, emphasizing positioning, items, and stage hazards to create fast, unpredictable matches perfect for couch multiplayer. Praised for its simple controls, party friendly gameplay, and the thrill of seeing beloved characters battle each other for the first time, Super Smash Bros. Became a breakout hit and launched one of Nintendo's biggest ongoing franchises. We covered its origins and legacy back in episode 35, so check it out if you'd like to learn more.
Episode 35, one of Rob's favorite episodes. If you didn't know, go check it out. Also, Ryan, I do believe the last time that we were all together, you mentioned that you would like to see Ryu Hayabusa as a character in the Smash Brothers series.
If we're talking about gaming history stuff, I would also throw in, you know, Claire or Leon from Resident Evil, or really any of those protagonists would fit right in.
They would kill it for sure. Rob, what else we got during this week in gaming history?
Well, next up on January 19th, 2006, Resident Evil Deadly Silence was released for the Nintendo DS, developed and published by Capcom. Created to celebrate the series' 10th anniversary, this title served as a portable reimagining of the original 1996 Resident Evil, which we covered back in episode 30. While it retained the core story, puzzle, and mansion layout of the PlayStation Classic, Deadly Silence introduced several DS specific enhancements, including touchscreen knife combat, first person rebirth mode rooms, and microphone based mechanics for certain puzzles. The game also added dual screen inventory management, updated enemy placements, and optional cooperative competitive multiplayer modes. Though still rooted in the fixed camera survival horror style of the original, Deadly Silence offered a fresh, modernized way to experience one of gaming's most iconic, fright filled adventures. This time on the go.
I wonder if that was good. I never played it. Really kind of curious if
I don't.
Resident Evil
That one I don't
translates
have
well.
any experience with.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that now. I never had an opportunity to play Deadly Science. Right, Rob, I did the same thing you did. I never had an opportunity to play Deadly Silence, and I'm kind of curious how that translated. I know the graphics would have been just fine if they kept the same graphics. All right, Rob, one more entry. What do we got? What's the fifth? What's the last one?
Well, last up, on January 22nd, 2008, Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden was released for PC, developed by the indie collective Tales of Games.
I'm
Carry
so
on.
sorry to interrupt. I'm so glad we're talking about this. This game deserves its own episode, I think.
Probably. Yeah, for sure. We'll have to add it to a future January.
For those that don't know, this bizarre comedic fan-based RPG blended parody, satire, and genuine affection for both classic JRPGs and 90s basketball culture. Set in a post apocalyptic future where the Chaos Dunk has nearly destroyed the world, the game follows an older Charles Barkley as he battles monsters, rogue baller gangs, and conspiracies involving former NBA stars. Built in RPG Maker, it features turn based combat, overwrought lore, and a deliberately melodramatic tone that riffs on everything from Final Fantasy to Space Jam. Though unlicensed and freely distributed, Gaiden became an early cult hit in the indie scene, earning a devoted fan base and recognition for its creativity, absurdity, and heartfelt tribute to the games it lovingly mocks.
The fact that we are talking about this on a podcast is remarkable in so many layers. The fact that this game exists at all is amazing.
Hey,
And
someone loves Barkley Shut Up and Jam. A group of fans love Barkley Shut Up and Jam enough to remake it in the 2000s. Period. That's the end of that sentence. You're right. That's remarkable. I do have the original Barkley Shut Up and Jam along with Shaq Fu on a list of topics because there's such interesting like little snapshots into like that what's the word I'm looking
the
for?
mindset behind game design at the time is just,
Yeah, exactly.
who can
Yeah,
we
and
get
that
for this
culture.
game?
Yep.
Barclays Open?
And that culture. That was the word I was looking for. But yeah, the fact that they made a sequel here in 2008, some fans made a sequel is phenomenal. All right, on to the topic at hand. The studio that made Hotel Dusk, Room 215 Cing, was founded in 1999 in Japan. Its roots stretched back to Riverhillsoft, a company that specialized in narrative heavy experiments during the 1990s. One of their most interesting projects was Dr. Hauser, released in 1994 for the 3DO. Dr. Hauser was a survival horror adventure set inside a sprawling mansion. It was a competitor or contemporary to Alone in the Dark. What set Dr. Hauser apart was its fully 3D environment, complete with a free roaming camera system that let players adjust their view. In 1994, that was cutting edge, absolutely cutting edge, and Dr. Hauser really influenced later Japanese survival horror design. While it didn't find a huge audience, it's remembered for that cinematic camera work. It's remembered for blending the camera work with exploration, for blending the camera work with puzzles, much like what we'd see a few years later in the original Resident Evil. Riverhillsoft also created a game called Overblood for the original PlayStation in 1996. This was another survival adventure title. Sometimes they cite it as the first fully 3D survival horror game on the PlayStation. So it's got, a little note affixed to it. In Overblood, you control a character named Raz Carsey who wakes up from cryogenic sleep in a mysterious research facility. Overblood features exploration and puzzle solving, and even the ability to switch between multiple characters to solve certain scenarios. It wasn't exactly a critical darling. Reviews at the time called it clunky compared to Resident Evil. Um, I think a lot of things really struggled in the wake of Resident Evil. It knocked our socks off, and I mean, it was a hard act to follow. We've talked about that in other episodes. But what Overblood did for the studio was show their commitment to narrative driven experiences built around mystery and atmosphere rather than nonstop action, which is definitely how most games kind of were built those days. These games made in the Riverhillsoft era weren't they never really achieved blockbuster status, but they are important experiments for our story today because in them you see that Riverhillsoft was trying to merge the pacing of novels and the tension of film with the interactivity of video games long before that approach became more common. When Riverhillsoft closed its doors in the late 1990s. Several of its key staff, including director Rika Suzuki and other veterans who had worked on these ambitious titles, they all decided to carry the torch forward. And so in 1999, they founded a new studio and they named it Cing. From day one, Cing's identity was clear. I would also like to add for people that are listening at home, if you don't have it in front of you and you want to figure out find the studio, it's Cing with a Cing. I'm glad I did that.
I would not have known that. I would have thought, Sing would
Right,
have made,
I
Just
know.
Dance, right?
We would have just put the S on it and been like, what the heck is this guy talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. No, it's Cing with a C. Cing wasn't established with the notion of competing with all of the juggernauts like Capcom to make a blockbuster action game. They liked the work they were doing. They liked the path they were treading. They wanted to continue to experiment with narrative first design. They often described their projects as interactive novels where the gameplay wasn't necessarily about reflexes or high scores, but immersing the player in a story. Their first major project was a game called Glass Rose. And speaking of Capcom, it's a collaboration they did with Capcom that launched on the PlayStation 2 in 2003. Glass Rose wasn't just a video game, it was marketed like a multimedia project. To help it stand out, Capcom brought in a popular Japanese actor called Yosuke Iguchi to star as the protagonist, named Takashi Kagatani. His likeness and voice were digitized into the game, making Glass Rose feel more like an interactive film than a traditional adventure. Now, this story played into Cing's love of mystery and time bending drama. Takashi, a journalist in the year 2003, is suddenly transported back to a rural mansion in 1929 while investigating an old string of murders. Once there, he becomes entangled in a murder mystery of his own, meeting a cast of eccentric characters, each with their own secrets and connections to the crime. Now, this narrative leans heavily on the classic whodunit trope, right? There are family grudges, hidden identities, and a creeping sense that no one in the house could be trusted. They designed a gameplay with a focus on story. And again, rather than fast paced action, players explored static backgrounds, they interacted with objects, and they questioned all the residents of the mansion. Instead of the action, it was the dialogue choices and investigation sequences that formed the core of the gameplay. And puzzles that were presented often revolved around piecing together the timeline of events. Now, this game used a unique word search system, right? Where players could highlight keywords and character dialogue to push the story forward. The concept was underlining passages in a detective's notebook. Glass Rose earned praise for its atmosphere and for its novelty of blending a television actor with a game narrative. Its Moody's 1920 setting combined with Iguchi's performance gave it a cinematic flair that frankly was really rare in early PlayStation 2 titles. With that being said, it did draw some criticism. There were people that don't like its pacing. Uh, they found the controls to be pretty awkward, and it had innovative gameplay mechanics, but that's all it was. And some people felt that that was very limited, that there wasn't much variety to the gameplay mechanics, and that left some reviewers very frustrated. Despite the flaws in Glass Rose, it was an important project for Cing. It kind of established the studio's reputation, right? They gained a reputation as a studio that was willing to experiment with form and with narrative. And it continued the trend that started in Riverhillsoft days, their commitment to interactive novels. The broader market may not have been ready for it, but it was their identity. It was who the studio was going to be, and it was in their DNA. Glass Rose remained a Japanese exclusive release, but it gained them global notoriety, so to speak. And they took that momentum and the lessons they learned in Glass Rose, and they carried those into their next project, which was a game called Trace Memory. After Glass Rose on the PlayStation 2, Cing decided to shift its focus from the home consoles to Nintendo's brand new handheld, which was the Nintendo DS. Now, the DS had just launched we're now in about 2004. And well, most of the industry was still trying to kind of figure out what to do with its dual screens, stylus, and microphone. Cing saw it as a perfect tool to realize their vision of interactive novels. Ryan, I'm gonna start with you. Do you remember that like early DS Wild Wild West series when everyone had to come up with their own gimmick and how to use it?
Everything was all new and different. Just the implementation of, hey, here's a touch screen. Well, what does that mean? Is that just going to be, uh, is that just going to be a map that shows us the racetrack? Or, hey, we're going to take the console, you're going to hold it sideways and, use it in a way that, had never really been considered before.
Right. Rob, do you remember any games that kind of played on that gimmick of like here's my screen, my DS, I want to do something different with the touchscreen capabilities?
Trauma Center.
That's a great example. That is a brilliant
Yeah,
example, honestly.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Bravo. Bravo for coming up with that one. I'm impressed. Trauma Center is a fantastic example of, we did a whole episode on it, and the concept of bringing the emergency room to this little handheld in a drama form. It's basically Grey's Anatomy, the video game. That was fantastic. I remember, what comes to mind to me isn't necessarily the touchscreen, but how many games were like, "Ooh, we've got a microphone, blow in the microphone," or "the microphone can hear you," or crap like that. Do you remember that gimmick that they tried for a little while?
I do.
But not any games that specifically used it.
Just in
Nah, it's okay. It was a lot of like, remember too, when the DS came out, we had oodles of budget games, like oodles of budget games, because, it was a handheld system and people wanted to make for it. So we had all these titles that was just trying to be edgy and different. And I just remember titles that wanted to use the microphone. So,
I remember on one of the Zelda games that was on it, there was some item or some way in which you had to blow into the microphone to
yeah, that was it.
activate or something. And
Yep, that was exactly what I was thinking
it
of.
never clicked to me that I'm supposed to do that. I'm sitting here like, what the heck is wrong with me? I should be
Yeah,
able to figure this out.
I could see it, but I couldn't place it. That was exactly what I was thinking about. And it wasn't it to the Zelda title that they did where there's different, like they did the Pokemon thing where there's story, it's like story of seasons and story of not seasons, but they're two versions of it that each kind of come from a different perspective.
You're
So,
thinking of the ages and seasons that was on the GBA.
oh man, so I'm a little bit early. Then what was the DS one that did that? No, didn't the DS have the 4-player Zelda? I think the DS had a 4-player
Oh,
Zelda.
the Four Swords.
Yes.
That was originally, well, no, I believe that was GBA as well. So
God,
you had to have the
buy
link
it.
cable, and
My
then there was the
goodness.
later on the GameCube Four Swords Adventures that
Man, my
was
memory
the
of that time period is not great in any way, shape, or form.
oh,
Any
Four
way,
Swords
shape, or
Adventures
form.
was a whole thing. You want to play this game? Great. Grab your GameCube and the game. Oh, and instead of controllers, you all need your own Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
Great
Wild.
game though.
Wild. In 2005, back to the story. In 2005, Cing released another Code to Memories, which was localized in North America as Trace Memory. Trace Memory was one of the DS's earliest adventure games, and frankly, it immediately stood out from the rest because of its ambition. The story followed a young girl named Ashley Mizuki Robbins, who travels to Blood Edward Island on her 14th birthday to meet her estranged father. Along the way, she encounters a ghost named D, a boy who has lost his memories, and together they unravel the secrets of the island and Ashley's family history. Like Glass Rose before it, the game leaned incredibly heavily on character driven storytelling, but Trace Memory innovated it in how it used the DS hardware. Puzzles often required players to think outside the box, literally. For example, one memorable solution involved closing the DS to stamp an image from the top screen to the bottom, simulating how you might press two pages of a book together. There's those things that we were just talking about. Other puzzles use the microphone, the touchscreen, and the dual displays in clever ways that made the hardware and the new features of the DS kind of essential to the mystery. Now, critics praised Trace Memory for those unique mechanics and narrative ambition, though it was really noted for being fairly short. Many players could finish it in just a few hours. But the reality is that it was an important stepping stone for the studio. It really showed that Cing could take risks on Nintendo's hardware and deliver an experience that was really unlike anything else in this early library. It also proved that there was a market for what they were putting out. Slower story driven experiences on a handheld, the kind that's normally dominated by platformers and mini games. Trace Memory was successful enough to give Cing credibility with Nintendo, and frankly, it set the stage for our topic today, their most famous project. With the DS firmly in their hands, with the philosophy down, with the understanding of how to develop on the platform, Cing really doubled down on their, I guess, interactive novel philosophy. But this time they decided that they were going to lean into the aesthetics of a pulp detective fiction. Fresh off the release of Trace Memory, they were eager to expand on the idea of the interactive novel. And so they decided that they were going to start to develop a pulp fiction novel, so to speak. And so, with that being said, development on Hotel Room Dusk 215 began not long after Trace Memory shipped in 2005. Cing's creative team wanted a story that felt more mature, one that would appeal to players who grew up on mystery novels and noir films rather than Saturday morning cartoons. And to that end, they chose a late 1970s setting, an era that carried just the right mix of grit and nostalgia. The protagonist in Hotel Dusk, Kyle Hyde, was designed as a classic noir archetype. He is a former New York detective turned wary salesman, haunted by the disappearance of his partner. Placing him in a rundown Los Angeles hotel gave the team a closed, intimate setting that they could fill with suspicious guests, hidden backstories, and long buried secrets, is how they looked at it. So the DS hardware was really central to its design. And what they decided was instead of holding the console vertically like most games, Hotel Dusk is designed to be played sideways like an open book. One screen would display Hyde's interactions with characters and environments, and the other was his notebook or his inner monologue when he was talking. So this decision, they decided kind of they wanted it to be an interactive novel, literally. Uh, and so they turned it sideways like a book. They turned it sideways like a novel. They made it so you weren't necessarily just turning pages, but shaping the story, shaping the interactive story through this concept. Visually, Hotel Dusk really sets itself apart from their other titles by having this more sketchbook inspired art style. They used rotoscoping, which basically means they filmed live actors and then traced over the footage to create these hand drawn, pencil shaded characters. And so the result looks more like moving illustrations that are pulled straight from a detective's journal. The art style has muted colors and very heavy line work, and that gave this game a very unique style, this like dreamlike quality that was very recognizable. Gameplay, their design divides gameplay between conversation and puzzle solving. Dialogue sequences resemble interrogation scenes where players had to kind of choose when to press characters for details and when to hold back. If you push too hard, a guest might shut down and lock away valuable information, for instance. And alongside these conversations, they designed environmental puzzles that made inventive use of the DS hardware. There were ones where you had to rotate the DS. Blowing in the microphone came back again. And even physically closing the handheld again, they did the stamping thing where you have to stamp one page onto another. They brought all the trace memory of award winning gimmicks back. By late 2006, Cing knew that they had something special. They knew that they had a game that they were working on that didn't look or feel like anything else on the handheld market. And so by the time Hotel Dusk launched in early 2007, they really turned the DS into something that no one else had. It is part mystery novel, part detective's notebook. Hotel Dusk itself became a stage for secrets, with every guest hiding a story of its own. And that's really what makes Hotel Dusk so compelling. It's that you can peel back the layers and uncover the truth behind the people you met. Rob, playing Hotel Dusk always reminds me that everyone you meet has a story. Some people hide it behind a tough exterior, others bury it in the past, but everyone's got one.
And unlike Kyle Hyde, you don't have to check into a shady hotel to get those stories out. These days, you can tell your own story with a podcast.
That's right. And the easiest way to do it is with Zencaster. It's an all in one podcasting platform that makes recording high quality audio and video as simple as checking in at the front desk. No complicated gear, no hassle, just log in, hit record, and you're ready to start unraveling your own narrative.
And the best part? Zencaster handles the post production for you. It cleans up background noise, balances your audio, and even trims out those awkward silences and filler words. Think of it like your own personal editor, one who makes sure your story sounds smooth from start to finish.
And once you're done recording, Zencaster helps you publish your podcast to all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of them. So instead of trying to dig up secrets in room 215, you can share your own stories with the world.
So, listeners, if you ever wanted to start your own podcast, now's the time. Head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use the code, all one word, memory card lane for 30% off your first month of any paid plan. Whether you're starting from scratch or improving an existing show, Zencaster makes it easy.
That's zencaster.com/pricing. Use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and get 30% off. Go share your story today.
And now, let's get back to the mysteries waiting in Hotel Dusk.
So, Hotel Dusk Room 215 first released in North America on January 22nd, 2007. And a few days later, starting in January 25th, 2007, it got an international release starting in Japan. And in Japan, it has a different title: Wish Room Angel's Memory.
That's a glow up.
I know. I
Wow.
know. I know. That's rough. That's a rough title. I don't know if I would have enjoyed or been excited about a game called Wish Room. You know what I mean?
Why not?
I don't know. It just doesn't sound as cool as Hotel Dusk.
That's definitely a glow up. I mean, you definitely get a sense from Hotel Dusk, room 215. It's like, okay, there's gives you a sense of the ambiance, right?
Yeah, like what's room 215? Why is room 215 special? And Hotel Dusk just sounds cool.
Wish room. It's like there's a kid,
It's not
and
Make a Wish Room, but I get it.
well, that's what I was going for.
Well,
Yeah.
you're just trying to figure out which room you're looking for.
Ooh, that was a good one. Well played. And you can't remember it because Angel's memory is awful. Yeah, we got there. I I own this. I actually own a first run of this. I bought this. I don't know if I bought it when it first came. I know I didn't buy it when it first came out, but I bought it in the first run because I was so excited for it. I was so excited for it because on paper, this looks like a me game every which way. The concept of an interactive novel is so appealing to me, and those that know me, that have been know that have known me and know my gaming habits, heavy narrative, good stories. No surprise, since I come on here and tell stories every week. Good stories are my thing. So the way they marketed this as a literal book, like flipping the DS sideways and playing a book, I was so excited for this. And I still have my copy. My copy is still sitting on the desk. I still have my copy. It's still sitting on in my bookshelf behind me. I I loved this game. I thought this game was fantastic. It for me personally, it lived up to the hype. Ryan, you said you had a little bit of familiarity with it.
I must have seen it from a friend or something. I remember borrowing it because seeing the DS held sideways was just like, well, why are you holding that wrong? It's like, wait, the game is designed around that? Okay.
Yeah, that was
And
certainly the draw.
yeah. And
It
then
was.
I'm just a sucker for, a good noir story.
I know, me too. That was the other part of it. I was so like noir. The early 2000s brought me back into noir with like the Max Payne series, for instance. And
Mm.
so here we are, 2007, and it's like, ooh, another good noir story. Yes, please. I think that the fact that Nintendo itself backed this game is very telling. They saw the potential in the DS as more than just a platform for their mascots and mini games. Cing's vision lined up perfectly with Nintendo's push to broaden what handheld gaming could be.
Yeah.
Now, critical reception was generally positive. Reviewers praised the art style, the atmospheric presentation, and everyone loved, as we just said, the game's willingness to try something different. We were all kind of, you know, intrigued by the concept of flipping the DS over to the side. Many critics highlighted the rotoscoped sketchbook visuals as a standout feature that gave the game a distinctive noir feel. The interrogation style conversations were commended for giving players meaningful choice, though some people felt that the pacing was deliberately slow, more like reading a novel than playing an exciting DS title. And yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Sales wise, the game performed modestly. In Japan, Hotel Dusk moved about 75,000 copies in its first week. That was respectable, but not necessarily blockbuster territory. By mid 2007, it had crossed 200,000 units worldwide. That's a solid number for a niche adventure title on a handheld. It's nowhere near the millions being sold by the juggernauts like Pokemon or New Super Mario Brothers, but it wasn't trying to be that type of game. Its commercial footprint was small, but big enough to establish a cult following. And that cult status grew over time. Players who connected with Hotel Dusk often described it as one of their most memorable experiences on the DS. It's a game that dared to slow things down and make you pay attention to dialogue, mood, and character nuance. It frequently kind of shows up in retrospective lists of hidden gems for the system, so people still like it, right? They recommend it. They're still telling people, "Hey, if you've never played Hotel Dusk, go to it," you know? The game's modest success was enough to greenlight a sequel. And in 2010, Cing released Last Window: The Secret of Cape West for the DS. Once again published by Nintendo, this follow up was set in Los Angeles just 1 year after the events of Hotel Dusk. Kyle Hyde returned as the protagonist, still working as a door to door salesman while wrestling with his unresolved past. This time, though, the setting shifted from a seedy hotel to an apartment complex called Cape West, which was a building scheduled for demolition. And much like the hotel itself, the apartment became a character. It's a place full of history and secrets, a place full of residents who all seem to be hiding something. In Last Window, Kyle's investigation uncovers a decades old murder mystery tied to the building's past, and as before, players kind of unravel the truth through interrogations, exploration, and puzzles. Last Window played on that same book like presentation, requiring people to hold the DS sideways, but it really went one step further into, like, it leaned in further into the interactive novel concept. This game included a feature called the Secret Story, which is essentially a novelization of events that updated as players progressed. And what it did was allow players to reread past chapters, filling in any details they might have missed. And it really kind of emphasized Cing's literary ambitions. Critics generally received Last Window well. They praised its storytelling atmosphere and its refinement of the mechanics from, that were established in Hotel Dusk. But the truth of the matter is, by 2010, the DS market had kind of shifted dramatically. Action driven hits and blockbuster franchises were dominating the store shelves, and that left very little space for these little niche adventure games at this point. And sales really reflected that reality. While the game was warmly received, it really failed to sell to a wide audience. And that was a problem because Cing was in a dire financial situation. The studio had already been struggling, and shortly after Last Window's release, because it didn't sell well, they were in a position where they had to declare bankruptcy. And so that game, The Last Window, ended up being their swan song. To make matters worse for fans outside of Japan and Europe, Nintendo then chose not to localize this game for North America. And so we here in the United States are an entire market unable to experience The Last Window, Kyle Hyde's
Okay.
final chapter. Feel better now?
I'm sitting here like, I can't believe I never knew this game,
I know, me too.
but
Me too.
it did come out in Europe, so it was translated.
Yeah, it was.
They just didn't economically decide to release it in the
True.
US.
Very true. So you can find it in English. You just can't find it. You can't find an NA region version, just a JP and a EU. So that's really the issue is the region. You could bypass region on the DS though, couldn't you? Or did it
I,
not have region? I can't remember which it is.
DS was region free. It
That's
was the
right. Okay.
3DS that introduced some region
That's exactly
specificity.
right. I knew one of them. I knew one of them took it and got it away. So yeah. So region wasn't even a problem. They just didn't. You're right. They just didn't even bring it here. Just didn't bring it here. So you could get it imported if you wanted. And people did that over time. The last window has taken on the same kind of cult classic reputation as Hotel Dusk did, but kind of with this added layer of bittersweet nostalgia. The game is a worthy successor to Hotel Dusk. It's a tragic end to one of the few studios that really championed narrative adventure games during the DS era. For many players, it reminds it, for many players, it's one of the great lost titles of the system. It's a final reminder of Cing's unique vision that was cut short just as it seemed to be hitting its stride. Looking back, the legacy of Hotel Dusk, Room 215, and Last Window, The Secret of Cape West, I think is much larger than their sales numbers would suggest. These games did prove that handheld systems could deliver mature, narrative driven experiences at a time when most publishers saw portables as the domain of puzzle titles and family friendly platformers. On the DS, I think they have a rightful place alongside Nintendo's other experimental hits that we've talked about, like Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney or Professor Layton. And together they all really cement this idea that the handheld is a apt home for interactive storytelling.
Throw Brain Age in there.
Oh, Brain Age is a good one. Brain Age is a very good one. In many ways, Cing carved out the middle ground between those two series, between Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton. Less courtroom drama, less brain teaser, but equal investment in characters, dialogue, and mystery. And their visual style, frankly, also left a mark. That rotoscope sketchbook style look of Hotel Dusk is instantly recognizable. And while few games have imitated it directly, Hotel Dusk was really the first to demonstrate how strong aesthetics like that can elevate an otherwise simple presentation. Paired with the deliberate pacing and noir inspired writing, Cing created an atmosphere that's still talked about today whenever fans discuss hidden gems of the DS library. For Nintendo, publishing Hotel Dusk was part of a broader push to redefine who video games could be for, right? The DS was marketed not just as a gaming system, but a device for everyone. You just said brain age. So they were marketing it not just to children or adults, but also parents and grandparents. Remember, brain age went after our grandparents, right?
That's right.
A moody, adult oriented mystery novel in game form might not have been an obvious fit, but it showed really how broad the DS's audience could stretch. Cing's closure in 2010 was a loss for the industry, but their games even today continue to be discovered by new players, often through secondhand carts, emulation, or word of mouth. Hotel Dusk wasn't a blockbuster. It didn't dominate sales charts. It didn't spawn a long running franchise, but it did carve out a unique space in the DS library. And its sequel Last Window really only reinforced that vision, even even though it marked the end of Cing as a studio. I know there's a small little bit of fans out there that have kind of been clamoring for a re-release or remasters, kind of hoping that we'll get these for a modern portable or modern portable would be the Switch technically nowadays. And with that, we may never see that. I don't know if these games are popular enough for them to ever do that. Although I think that maybe a compelling argument for that would be them both on one cartridge. I think that could be an interesting way to do it. I think people, from the value standpoint, would probably buy into two interactive novels on one cartridge. That's just my thought on the matter. Hotel Dusk though has this place, right? It's this we always whenever we bring up cult classics, I think this is one of the games that gets added to that story very much. You know, these games that might not have changed the mainstream, but they're versatile and expressive and unique in their own right. And I think that this game definitely falls on that one. To be fair, in the end, Cing's legacy is one of ambition and artistry, right? They never chased blockbusters. They just wanted to make books that you could play. And I personally, as a literature guy, I thought that that's fantastic. I'm a big fan. So, big fan. Ryan, little fan.
You can certainly imagine, kind of an alternate universe, right, where there's a whole series of these kinds of interactive novels, on that system and on subsequent systems.
Yeah. I mean, the genre never died at all. Um, and it kind of, I don't know, kind of started here. I don't know if I'd say started here, but and to be fair, interactive literature has been around for a long time. But Hotel Dusk definitely did something special with it, and I think it's worthy of our time and admiration in a lot of ways because of it. So, if you enjoyed our look back at Hotel Dusk Room 215, we've got plenty of other episodes on story-driven games waiting for you. We brought them up. We explored the courtroom drama of Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney in episode 59, the rain soaked tension of Heavy Rain in 234, or the other experimental hit, Professor Layton and the Curious Village in episode 77. You can find those episodes and the rest of our catalog anywhere you listen to podcasts or on our website at www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people learn on our website?
Well, you can learn what we are going to be talking about in our future episodes. You can learn how to support us with access to our Patreon and getting ad-free and unedited versions of our episodes. You can learn about our Discord, where you can come chat with Dave and I about stuff, learn more, who knows what about.
Yep.
And you can learn where to find us on social media, where I can be found on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor. Dave?
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong, and we know that Ryan likes to hide. Ryan's a Luddite in all actuality. He doesn't actually like anything electronic. He just comes on here and pretends.
You can find me at meow 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 meow.
Okay. All
Good.
right.
Good.
Good. Thanks. I'm glad after a dozen or so episodes, you finally gave us your social media.
It had to come up eventually.
That's a true statement. Very true.
Social meowdia, Dave. Get it right.
Oh,
Oh,
good Lord. You win. You win with that one. Each week, we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a person, a technology. We've even covered a circus and the history of chess before.
Ugh,
When we
don't
sit
watch that one. Listen to that.
when when we sit down to research new topics each week, the most exciting part is finding out new and interesting things about the games we already know. Then we get to come on here and teach you all these fun things. It's a fantastic cycle of teaching and learning, learning and teaching, which we celebrate by going round table and talking about what we've learned today. Ryan, as our guest, I'm going to let you go first. What did you learn today?
I had no idea this game had a sequel. I was today years old. I wonder if the kind of branding of it, not having any, link to Hotel Dusk, it, didn't help. And, granted, the fact that it didn't come out in the US at all also didn't help. But if I had seen it on a list somewhere, wouldn't have placed that it was, same protagonist, same kind of, type of game even.
Rob, what did you learn today?
I learned that there was another game for the DS that you held sideways.
What
I
was
only
the
knew of
game?
one.
Which was
Guitar Hero.
you hold Guitar Hero sideways and it comes from the top of the screen?
I don't remember how
Oh,
you had to
you
hold it
got to
like with
hold
the
it.
adapter
Yeah, it had that stupid
that
controller
plugged into
that
the
plugged
Game Boy
in.
adapter or Game Boy
Mm-hmm.
plug. Yep.
You right,
Yeah,
Ryan.
bring
I'm honestly surprised we don't know about the last window. I would venture a bet because of the open architecture of the DS, the region free attitude. The DS is probably one of the most pirated libraries on the face of the earth because it was so easy. Not that I didn't have a handful of them to get one of the like R4 cartridges that you could put the entire library on.
Dave, I've never heard of what'd you call it?
I I don't know, some letter and some number.
Yeah, never heard of that, but that sounds like something that I would have liked.
Yeah. I'm genuinely surprised that I'd never tripped on this or more people hasn't seen this as a result, because I was also surprised to find out that there was a sequel to this. But with that being said, uh m- I was a Trace Memory fan, and I never put two and two together. I never really made the connection that the same people that made Trace Memory also made Hotel Dusk. And in hindsight, it's really like duh and relevant, but I really wasn't making those kind of connections at the time, as a younger gamer.
Yeah.
So that was kind of neat to put together and go, yeah, I get that now. I liked both those games for the same reason, because I'm a dork who likes interactive novels and stories in that respect. So that was fun to put those two things together. All right. Well, before I take it out of here and into next week, I'll start with our guest again. Ryan, anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
Yeah, if it's okay, I've uh, I've written a kind of a noir monologue about the
Okay.
Nintendo DS.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Let me get my best gravelly voice on. Apologies in advance. The stylus slid out smooth, quiet, the kind of tool a man uses when he doesn't want to leave fingerprints. I touched the screen. It chirped back, bright, hopeful. Didn't know any better. Figures. That's it. Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo. Best performance in our entire 280 some odd. I don't know about that. We had some other darn good guard ones. You're on like 1 through 9 of the top 10 of best performances on our podcast.
I highly doubt that, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Rob, how you gonna top that?
I'm not. We're just gonna move on. So, let's. Yeah, I can't. That's good.
Would you like to add anything? You just want to leave it at his
No, we're
grovelly.
we're leaving it there. Just cut the episode. Call
Just,
it good.
I thought about making that cold open to the episode. To be honest with you, he's doing it. I'm like, this might be a good cold open. With Hotel Dusk Room 215, Cing showed how far a handheld console could stretch when a studio was willing to take risks. They didn't reinvent the adventure genre, but they bent it towards something intimate and literary, a mystery you didn't just read, but lived through page by page. The result was a game where the most memorable moments weren't found in action sequences, but in the quiet tension of a conversation, the satisfaction of a puzzle solved, or the subtle shift when a character finally lets their guard down. It wasn't fast paced, and it wasn't designed to please everyone, but that was part of its charm. Hotel Dusk reminded players that games could be slow, moody, but still unforgettable. And while Sing is gone, their vision of interactive novels, stories shaped by dialogue, choice, and atmosphere, still resonates in modern narrative adventures. So whether you're flipping the DS sideways, interrogating strangers in a rundown hotel, or just chasing ghosts of the past, Hotel Dusk reminds us that sometimes the best journeys in gaming feel less like a blockbuster and more like a story whispered late at night. Next week, we're leaving behind the smoky halls of Hotel Dusk and stepping into the wide open world of one of Square's most ambitious RPGs. In 1992, Romancing Saga hit the Super Famicom and redefined what a role playing game could be, introducing non-linear storytelling, open exploration, and a freeform character system that challenged the traditional JRPG formula. While it never reached the same international fame as Final Fantasy, the Saga series carved its own loyal following and influenced the design of RPGs for decades to come. So pack your bags, pick your path, and try not to get lost in branching storylines as we head into our own little romance on next week's trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.